Hello, my name is Ralf Friedrichs. I'm an addiction recovery coach and the host of the Take Your Life Back Today show. As an addiction recovery coach, I want to share something with you, and let me be crystal clear. Just imagine being buried alive. You know you're in a coffin, but you also know you're not dead. You don't know how to get out of that coffin, so you think by lifting the lid, you might get out. But the enormous weight upon the lid prevents you from doing that. You think you're just going to die. You think maybe if I bang on the lid, I'll unsettle the dirt and maybe somebody will notice and start digging their way down to help me. This is what it's like to find yourself at the lowest point of addiction. You know you need help. You know you can't do it on your own, but you don't know where to turn. You just think you're going to die. In reality, people don't think about death when they're habitually abusing drugs and alcohol. In order to feed an addiction, you have to be great at repressing the fear of death. I often ask you, my audience, did it ever cross your mind that maybe, just maybe, while you were abusing drugs and alcohol, you might take what God has given you, which is called life, away from you? And not just from you, but selfishly, you take it away from people that love you most and care for you most. Your children, your grandchildren, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife. With this, I want to leave one last thought with you. Please don't be the person that I'm talking about that went to their coffin, to their death, without seeking help first. Instead, be the person that seeks help by reaching out to people like myself at 844-405-HELP, or to people like the person I'm going to talk about now. His name is Larry Geis from the Geis Academy at 516-458-2741, or you can Google him at www.odysseyconsultant.org. Larry Geis and I always tell people like you, it doesn't matter where you came from, it doesn't matter where you've been. What matters most is that you're seeking help before it's too late. Reach out to either Larry or I. Again, you can reach me at 844-405-HELP. Larry, you can reach at 516-458-2741. Both Larry and I are standing by to help you. Larry has over 30 years experience. He can take you from your depression to happier times, low self-esteem to better self-esteem, from addiction to recovery, hand in hand, 24 hours at a time. Larry Geis, 516-458-2741, or myself at 844-405-HELP. Here I am in my next village, still in the state of Alaska, trying to do these videos as I go along. As you can see, this is my luxurious bedroom. I'm staying at the city office in one of the native villages, actually on the outskirt of the land. We're actually on this little island. It is now 5 to 8 in the morning, and your time, wherever you might be watching me, is going to be totally different. Where I'm from right now, it's 12 o'clock. Today we're going to talk about what's in the name, the many ways to say DUI. It is only 10 years after mass production of automobiles began in the U.S. that the first drunk driving law was passed in New York in 1910. Soon California followed, as many other states did as well. These early laws didn't define level of intoxication. When blood alcohol content, otherwise known as BAC levels, were first introduced as a standard, laws in the 1930s and 40s set a bar at 0.15%. It has now dropped down to 0.8%, with the invention of the breathalyzer in 1953 replacing the 20-year-old in relatively precise drunkometer. 20-year-old and relatively device is now defunct. DUI versus DWI versus DWAI. The law prohibited drunk driving and is most commonly known as a DUI, which stands for driving under the influence. However, many states use the acronyms including the following. Pay attention here now. DUIL, which is driving under the influence of liquor. DWI, driving while intoxicated. OMVI, operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated. OWI, operating while intoxicated, or OUI, operating under the influence. Regardless of the acronym and the meaning of generally are all the same. Driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, don't make the mistake of calling it drunk driving. If you're arrested for DWI, the DA does not need to prove that you were drunk, whatever that means. All the DA has to show is that the driver drank enough booze or take enough drugs so that the driver's ability to control the motor vehicle was ineffective and very dangerous, I might add. The challenge A DUI is a challenge for the accused driver because it usually includes two separate crimes, either one of which can be used to convict a driver: the standard DUI and the DUI per se. The good news is that the driver who is convicted of both of these offenses will usually only be sentenced for one. DUI elements. In a standard DUI, the crime is accused of driving under the influence of alcohol to the extent that it impairs physical and mental facilities, or I should say faculties. In most states, a DUI offense consists of two separate elements. The first one is the operation requirement. Operating a vehicle, that is driving or operating, sometimes even sitting or sleeping behind the wheel, will suffice. A motor vehicle, typically a car, but not a motor vehicle, can also be a truck, can also be a motorcycle, can be a golf cart, even a bicycle in some states, a tractor, a horse, possibly even a skateboard. As for the operation requirement, a police officer or a witness who saw you driving usually satisfies that argument. On occasion, however, especially after an accident, you may be out of the car when the officer arrives and the operation element is proven because you admit to drinking and driving, or you have a test done known as a field sobriety test. Next is, if I can get this page turned, in some states you could be charged with a DUI even if you found in the car with the engine turned off and the keys in your pocket. However, in other states where DUI strictly requires you to be in the control of the car while it's moving, you most likely would not be charged with a DUI. In some, but not all states, you must have been operating a vehicle on a public roadway. In other states, it makes no difference where you were operating the vehicle, when it was on your own property even. And the vehicle need not to be a car. For instance, it is possibly charged for a DUI while operating a golf cart on a private golf course. Number 2, under the influence. Under the influence, that is, while under the influence of intoxicated beverages or drugs, or a blood alcohol level that exceeds the legal limit, 0.8 as we discussed prior in all states, or 0.0 for those under 21 years of age in many states. As for the under the influence requirement, the states differ on how this element is defined. These pages are kind of sticking together here because of the climate we're in. For example, California, the prosecution must prove that you were impaired to a degree that you couldn't drive with the same caution or care as a sober person under all those circumstances. However, in Colorado, the prosecutor needs to prove only that you were impaired at the slightest degree, and other states frequently use the impaired as a appreciable degree, standard or some subtle variation of that. The fact is, you don't really know the exact meaning of these words in your state laws unless you read the instructions that the judge will give you and give the jury beforehand. Fortunately, these jury instructions likely are available in your local law library, so you can study them prior to going to court. DUI per se. In a DUI per se, the driver is accused of driving while he or she has blood alcohol content of 0.08 or greater, even though the alcohol has no effect on him or her. In other words, if the printout from a properly administered breath or blood test demonstrate that your BAC is over 0.8, you can and most likely will be convicted of a DUI. All states prohibit the operation of a vehicle on a public road if you have a blood or contact more than 0.08. The offense occurs regardless of whether the alcohol had or could have had any effect of your driving abilities. Just driving with particular blood condition can result in the same repercussion as described for driving under the influence. Not only is this a standalone offense, but having the amount of alcohol in your blood can be used to convince a jury that you were also under the influence. As a general rule, I might add, most people charged with DUI plead guilty if a breath or blood test show of 11 or higher, but are more inclined to fight if the amount is 10 or below. In fact, some states you get boost if your blood alcohol count was less than particular amount, typically 0.5. Under the laws, presume you're not to be under the influence, so most attorneys usually like to fight that. So the definitions we want to just go over with real quick one more times, and there are quite a few, so pay attention to which, if in fact that you have a court appearance to which you were charged with. But a DUIL stands for driving under the influence of liquor. A DWI stands for for driving while intoxicated. A OMVI, operating motor vehicle while intoxicated. And then you have OWI, operating while intoxicated, or OUI, operating under the influence. Regardless of whatever the acronym, the meaning is generally the same, which means that it's unsafe for you to operate a car, a bicycle, some states skateboard, golf cart, even a horse in some states. It is illegal to operate that, and it is also a safety issue. Remember, the guidelines is 0.08. Back in 1913, it was 0.15, drastically reduced. Field sobriety tests usually could tell you your result immediately. If you are scoring higher than a 0.11, it is in your best interest, and of course consult with your attorney, to probably plead guilty, and hopefully it is your first offense. Now, however, let's discuss first offense compared to possibly third offense. In the state of New York, if you've had 3 WIs, you're looking at quite an amount of years in prison for that. Folks, the easiest way to avoid DWI, there are a couple of ways, but the most easiest way would be not to drink and drive or drug and drive. Now, we can even backtrack a little further and say the best thing to do is not to drink or do drugs in the first place. However, I do accept the fact that this is not a perfect world. I am not here to tell you that you should not drink. I've said this many times before, that even in the Bible, God consumed, or I should say Jesus consumed wine. The problem with alcoholism is that when people don't know when to say no. Sociable drinking is okay in my book. It is never okay to do drugs in my book, nor should it be in your book. But to have a sociable drink, 1 or 2 drinks, remember what I've said previously in previous shows. For a man, 2 to 3 drinks is maximum. For a woman, 1 to 2. Now, if you exceed that on a daily basis, you might want to look into finding out what the situation is, and more than likely the situation is pretty simple. It is called alcoholism. It is called drug addiction, and at that time you might want to take a self-inventory and figure out what you need to do to straighten this out. You don't want it to get to a point where it's too late. Remember, drinking and driving not only hurts you, but you hurt innocent people. So many times do we read in a newspaper or hear in the news of somebody killing another person due to their irresponsibility of drunk driving. If you're going to drink, if you are an alcoholic, do it in the safety of your own home. I prefer you don't do it at all, but it is what it is. My job here today is to let you know the definitions and the different types and the percentages of DUI. I hope to God that this segment was informative for you. I hope and I pray that you all have a great day, but I hope and pray each and every show and each and every day that you all have a sober rest of your life. I will try to do another show during this trip. We have another 7 days to go. I've done 3 shows, which is more than I thought I would be able to do. I'm very fortunate enough to have internet service in this village to upload this onto YouTube and get it out to all you folks. Hope to God you all have a great day. God bless you.